Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Now, over the last week, I had the high honor and privilege of embarking on an ancestral journey to the motherland, the land of our African ancestors. Now, before colonization, the ancient Nubian, Carthaginian, Moors, and Numidians called this vast continent of more than 1.3 billion people Alkebulan. Alkebulan is believed to be of ancient Egyptian origin, which means mother of mankind or Garden of Eden. The term has been used to describe the African continent for centuries, and for many Africans, it symbolizes a sense of pride and identity. Now, our relationship to Alkebulan is directly related to the enslavement of our ancestral peoples by European colonizers. Over the period of the Atlantic slave genocide, in the name of capitalist expansion, from approximately 1526 to 1867, some 12.5 million captured men, women, and children were forcibly and violently put on ships from slave dungeons such as the Elmina and Cape Coast castles in the central region of Ghana. Just over 10 million enslaved people arrived in the Americas as a result of that great human atrocity. Now, for me, this was a personal journey to reckon with the interrupted history of my African lineage and to pay homage to my ancestors who endured an egregious crime against humanity. Come with me for the next hour as I explore Ghana, the country that joined its counterparts in the African diaspora in the commemoration of Emancipation Day.
The West African nation of Ghana has witnessed significant economic growth in the last decade, making it one of the fastest growing economies on the continent. One of the hallmarks of its economic growth is its tourism thrust, specifically targeted at Africans in the vast diaspora who are desirous of connecting with their ancestral roots. In 2019, Ghana launched the Year of Return campaign to bring foreigners, particularly from the Black diaspora, to Ghana as visitors and as returning nationals. This would bring in fresh skills and capital and place Ghana more firmly on the global map as a key destination for Black diaspora travel and investment. It has been 3 years since Ghana hosted the Year of Return Ghana 2019, a year-long program of activities marking the 400th anniversary of the first recorded enslaved Africans to the United States, and it has accomplished much success thus far. Just over 1,500 African Americans have permanently relocated to Ghana, with no intention of ever returning to the US. Others are also inspired to follow their lead. Another way that Ghana is connecting with its African descendants in the diaspora is by hosting the annual Emancipation Day commemoration. And this is where my journey begins. Since 1998, the country launched its own emancipation celebration to coincide with emancipation in formerly British colonies of the Caribbean. The commemorations, held in tandem with the Panifest Foundation, began with a watch night procession on July 31st through the streets of Cape Coast. Cape Coast is the site of one of the biggest slave dungeons in West Africa, and which was also the site of great pain and untold torture at the hands of criminal human smugglers. The solemn candlelight vigil is described by Rabbi Kohen Nathaniel Levi as follows.
The march from the interior to these dungeons that we're commemorating. We also are commemorating in our march the long march to freedom, the long march to emancipation, the long march to liberation. And so for all of the struggles that we had to go through and then endure, we're walking that march tonight. We're also walking the march for a luta continua, the continued struggle that we must continue to struggle to enjoy the freedom and emancipation that we fight for every day. So for every inch of freedom that we fought for, we have to fight to maintain it, because there are those who try to take those freedoms away from us. So it's with that spirit, it's with that mind that we are going to march tonight. And it's with all that symbolism that we are marching. So we are holding our candles for a reason, because we are promoting the spirit of unity. So we're going to light candles from this campfire here, from this bonfire here. And when we light the candles from this bonfire, each person will share their light. So it's like we're sharing the light with each other. So when we do it, we try to, as quickly as we can, get a light from your brother or your sister. That's the way we share knowledge. That's the way we share wisdom. That's the way we lend a hand to each other. We share our light with each other. We share what we have to each other. And that's the symbolism of taking our light from here. And when we get ready to take off, we're going to have to be in order. So in that order, we're going to try to do just 5 people staying close to each other and a line going back. 5 across, and as many as we are, we're going to extend as far back as we have to be. And so when we try to go forth for the chant, we're going to do that. Our Sappho company is here tonight. They're going to lead us. They're going to lead us with their chants. Whenever the spirit moves, we also will break out in a song. But remember, this is a march for our ancestors. The program, this is just the beginning. When we get inside the courtyard, we can see this full tribute. But the Nana Numa waiting for us at the door. So I think we feel that spirit here tonight. Are we all glad to be here tonight?
Yes.
Do we know why we're here tonight?
Yes.
We have the spirit of our ancestors. You think in your mind, an ancestor that's been a hero or a shero to you.
Yep.
Some African man or woman that has been important to your life that you look up to, that you think that fought a good fight for African people. You think of them when you're marching. Keep them in your mind. Let them be your strength. Let them be your inspiration here tonight.
This year's commemoration in Cape Coast also saw representation from Barbados through its cultural attaché to Ghana, Phil Phillips.
Tonight, it brings me great joy to join with my brothers and sisters across the world on the eve of Emancipation Day to celebrate the enduring spirit of Pan-Africanism and its great significance to the lives of Black people everywhere. As we commemorate the hard-won freedom of our ancestors, let us cling to the gifts of resilience and hope that they have bestowed upon us, and equally, let us celebrate their dreams, their triumphs, their achievements, manifest in each and every one of us who exist by virtue of their sacrifices. We are often taught that Pan-Africanism was a reaction, a response arising from the many traumas of colonialism inflicted on the African people. But I have always felt that Pan-Africanism is perhaps the most natural state of being for an African people. Yes, thank you. It was never waiting on an external catalyst. Its gaze has always been introspective, focusing firmly on that common thread that binds our people and cultures across oceans, borders, languages, and cultures and time, declaring that our greatest strength can be found in our solidarity and our partnership, and recognizing that our first obligation to ourselves is to reclaim our relationships, to reclaim our African family.
At the stroke of midnight, a roll call was performed in which the names of our deceased ancestors were acknowledged.
May their souls rest in peace. May their memories continue on. We always show them the respect that they have long earned.
The Emancipation Day commemorations continued later that day in the ancestral village of Asin Manso, the site of one of the many slave rivers in West Africa. Asin Manso, which is 40 kilometers along the Cape Coast Kumasi Highway in the central region, holds an emotional part of the slave trading history that has not been so popularly told. The Asin Manso slave river site, known locally as Donkarnuso, is where the slaves from the northern part of Ghana and sometimes neighboring countries had their last bath before being taken into the slave dungeons along Africa's west coast. The enslaved from the Salaga, Pikworo, and Sackville areas came through the Bono and Enzrokana areas to Kumasi. They would usually then turn eastwards towards the central region and Asin Manso. Here, the kidnapped Africans took a rest. They were sorted out and then branded. They would then take the last bath before taken to the castles. Those of us who return also reenact the last bath on behalf of our ancestors to remember this very dark aspect of their harrowing journey. The Emancipation Day commemoration at Asin Manso is usually packed with cultural activities and a parade of the local tribal chiefs, many of whom lost hundreds of thousands of their own ancestors to enslavement. Present at this year's activity was Ghana's president, Kufuor, who underscored the importance of reparative justice and diaspora. The event ended with a wreath-laying ceremony in honor of 3 enslaved African ancestors who were repatriated from Jamaica, the United States, and Barbados respectively. The first 2 were Samuel Carlson and Crystal, and the last ancestor buried here was an unknown enslaved African from Barbados who was repatriated to Ghana from that country by Prime Minister Mia Mottley in November 2019. Village chiefs and tribal elders then proceeded to the Asin Manso River to reflect and remember the ancestors who suffered and perished there. This is the Bubb Report. When we return, we take you on a tour of both the Cape Coast and Elmina castles.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
This is the Elmina Castle and Slave Dungeon. This slave dungeon is located along the southern Cape Coast region of Ghana, west of Accra. The town itself is primarily a fishing port with a bustling commercial scene and lively atmosphere, similar to any fishing village across the Caribbean. Now, as the plantations in the Americas became economically lucrative for Europeans, the trade of enslaved Africans expanded, and Elmina became the last place many thousands of Africans would see of their homeland. And for many, it would also be the last place they would see altogether, due to the high death rates incurred during the Middle Passage in such abominable conditions. Now, at the height of the slave trade, 30,000 enslaved Africans passed through Elmina each year on their way to the Americas. This continued for nearly 300 years in appalling and subhuman conditions. There were many horrors witnessed here, as it is where enslaved Africans were detained and tortured before being shipped to the New World.
So we call this place St. George's Castle or Elmina Castle, you see, built by the Portuguese in 1482. They first arrived in 1471. When they came, they met the then king called Nana Kwamna Ansa. Based upon agreements, he released this portion of land. So the main concept over here wasn't meant for slavery, no, into goods.
So let's walk. Where are we going now?
Yeah, later they changed to human trade. So all the rooms on the ground floor, these are storerooms.
So this was not originally built for
Slavery, no.
Okay.
Into goods. Then they converted to human trade. So the castle is talking about 1,000 captives at a time, about 600 men and about 400 women. At times the number could be more. 1637, they died to cover the castle. Later the English came in 1872. As like now, the castle is 541 years. This is the biggest and the oldest castle in the whole of West Africa in terms of transatlantic slave trade. And about 400 women were spread out over here. 400. Yeah. That's the governor's balcony. You also want to call him the governor will stand at the top to select one of the women because some of the officers were sexually abusing the women here. Yeah. So the governor will stand over there. Only few women will be assembled here. He will look through, then he will make his choice. The one the governor has selected, or the chosen one, might have been in the den for several months without washing down. It's good that you've been to the Asin Manso. That's where you have the slave river.
Yes.
The captives from Northern Sector, from Salaga, Kumasi, Asin Manso, they will stop over there. They will take their first or last bath before they brought over here. When the governor selects someone, they have to get water from this well. She wash down in the middle of the courtyard. Then she make pass through this access to the governor's bedroom. So this access connects to the governor's room. The wooden aspects have been changed, but the format is the same. When the ships had arrived, some of the women were likely seen to be pregnant. They were separated. Houses were built in the town for the pregnant ones. They were stay there to give birth. Later, the children were brought back to the castle to be educated as the new officers. And that was the beginning of the formal education over here from 1529. Their mothers, we call them lucky ones. They remained here as domestic servants to the castle, as cooks, not as captives anymore. In 1637, the Dutch officers moved to the town. They customarily married the women over there, and they had children with them. Along the coastal zones, we have so many European names over here: Van Dyke, Van der Poel, De Heer, Duncan, Ferguson, and the light color scheme of the mixed blood Africans. It brought about disunity among the Africans and the Africans themselves. As a result of the color differences, people were looking down upon the fellow Africans. Indirectly.
Because they had lighter skin.
Very good.
Right. But it's a legacy of race.
The Europeans intentionally created divide, conquer, and rule. That's what integration that they brought. In Ghana alone, about 40 to 50 forts and castles were built along the coastal zones. 17 of them are still existing.
In Ghana?
In Ghana.
17 castles?
Yes.
Actually, but this is the oldest?
We have 3 castles in Ghana. Elmina Castle, Cape Coast Castle, and Christiamo, Osu Castle in Accra. The rest are forts and lodges. There is a similar place in Senegal, the Gore Island, Zanzibar in Tanzania, Fort Jesus in Kenya, Mombasa.
Fort Jesus,
yes.
You said?
I don't know where you're coming from. Surprisingly.
Now there is also a dark legacy embedded in the center of this horrid dungeon. In the middle of the main courtyard is a large red brick building. When the Portuguese were in control of the castle, it was a Catholic church. In there, priests administered religious rites and taught about who God was taught to be, and assured the enslaved of God's love and forgiveness. The Dutch, who were Reformed Christians, when they conquered this dungeon, they would not worship in the same Catholic church. Their disagreement with Catholicism was so strong that they did not even want to use the same building, but instead chose to have their church in one of the spacious and well-ventilated rooms above the women's dungeon. In that church, above one of the large windows looking out over the ocean, is an inscription from Psalm 132 that says, quote, "For the Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling place. This is my resting place forever," unquote. The upper floor of the Catholic Church was eventually converted into a military mess hall, and the lower floor was used as a slave auction floor for many centuries.
We have two churches over here. The Portuguese were Catholics.
Yes.
They had their church in the middle of the courtyard, and the Dutch were Protestants. The Dutch had their church right above the dungeon. That's the Dutch church.
Okay. So there were two churches in this castle?
Yes, at different times.
Okay. So you had, were both of these, one was a Catholic church and one was a Protestant church?
Yes.
Okay.
It's right up there. So the captives were here and the church were upstairs.
Directly above. Yes. So directly above this enslaved dungeon.
Yes, the Africans were here.
The church is upstairs.
Some are saying that they use the Bible as a tool to brainwash the Africans through indoctrination. Because some people believe that the Bible was imposed on the Africans.
Yes. But I mean, it was imposed.
Yeah, that's the ironic aspect of the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's ironic. Church.
Yeah. So
it was seen as a normal business. It was seen as a normal business.
The church. So on Sundays or whenever they worshipped, whenever the white captors worshipped up there, the enslaved is down here. They're hearing what's going on up there.
They never mind. Even if they were having their church, they were seen as commodities, as an asset, not as humans. People at times ask this question that why the Europeans were doing business. If their intention, their motive was to gain much profit, then economically they are taking good care of them, rather than allowing them to die and so on. But they don't forget the
these are the original bars that my ancestors held.
Yes. If these bars were to be the original bars, the captives could have easily escaped. And this wood here is original. This wood here is oak, and the second one at this side. They are the two main original beams by the Dutch. Local red oak, the rest are new.
Okay.
Red bricks by the Portuguese. When the Dutch took over the castle, they destroyed some parts of the castle. So they brought their own building materials to rebuild those affected parts. Yeah. So we are moving to the largest room for the women.
Original cannonball.
So that's a cannonball.
About 25 kilos or 50 pounds.
So one of the dungeons for the women too. 120 women were kept here. We have 150 over there. That's the largest room for the women. Buckets were placed at various corners for them to ease themselves. Not all the captives were from Ghana, and the mode of transportation at that time was by foot. Those who made it here were very weak. During their second month of staying in their various rooms, some of the captives could not even walk from the middle of the dungeon to where the buckets were placed. They have to do everything on the floor. Feces, urine, vomiting, blood, they slept in it. There were no mats for them. That's the original floor they slept on. All the big entrances were closed with metal gates. The air from the small doors was not enough for those at the back. That was the other source of ventilation, which was even connected to a magazine. They were keeping their guns, gunpowder, chemicals in that room. If there is a leakage over there, the scent will just move straight here, polluted the air and kill them. And for the dead ones, they were tied to stones. They would throw them to the sea.
So, what you're telling me is, our enslaved female ancestors who died here.
Yes.
What happened to them? Could you repeat that?
Yeah, they were tied to stones.
They were tied to stones.
And they would throw them to the sea for them to go down to the water.
Okay.
There is a stench over here. The room is poorly ventilated, and you could have used chemicals to clean this place to remove the scent. But don't forget, this history. You have to maintain the origins of this place.
There is a particular scent here.
Yes, that's why. You could have used chemicals to clean this place, but you want to maintain the origins of this place.
And what about the floor?
It's original floor they slept on.
It's original flooring, nothing was done to it.
Nothing was done to it.
Because there is a particular, the consistency of the floor here is different from out there.
Yes, you can see. That's a reservoir for drinking, washing, bath, etc. by the Portuguese. Whenever it's rain, water passes through the pipes and gets inside. When the Dutch came, they had their own reservoir because they were afraid. They thought it has been poisoned. We've done a research, it has not been poisoned.
Okay.
And that's a cannonball. The women who were difficult, those who were resistant to be raped by the officers, The chains will be tied around their ankles here. They will chain them. No food, no water, whether raining or shining. They will stand here.
So the women who
were
resisted their enslavement were punished for resisting.
Yes.
Okay, and that cannonball there is an example of that.
Yeah, they're just breaking down their spirits.
It's better for people to be good friends when they are living apart than when they are living together.
So that's where the women went through to the room of no return. When the ships had arrived, the strong women made to pass here to the point of no return, so we are passing there.
It took the team to 11 years before. Why? Sometimes.
In this room, about 150 to 200 men were kept here. At the same time, a transit passage to the point of no return. Source of ventilation and lights. The two windows were done later. Slave exits to waiting rooms. The room at the back, over there, it was a storeroom for the branding equipment. Most of the captives were branded. Hot metals with the merchant names we place here on their forehead or at their back for identification. Many of them died after receiving the shock.
So this is where the process of historical erasure occurred in respect of our names. So we were given the last names of these Europeans, and a lot of us still carry those last names.
Yeah, you've lost your identity.
And we make fun of those who have the temerity to maintain their African names. Yeah. Okay.
So that's it.
So this is the storeroom for the branding equipment.
And as for the labor that they used, the Europeans actually came with 600 workers from Portugal. They employed some of the locals over here. It took them 2 years for them to raise the face of the castle. The castle was built in stages. Later, when they got the captives, that was the time they used them to do much expansion. So most of the works were being done by our brothers and sisters over here.
Okay.
These flowers are being brought from the diaspora in the memory of those who died here for remembrance. So slave exits to waiting boats. You take one step down here. A step down.
Oh my goodness.
So that's where the women came from, and the men from that side. We believe that in a place where so many souls have been lost, have been perished, the spirits of our ancestors, they are still here. Sometimes the room is very heavy. Families were separated, and this place could be the first time that likely they will see themselves, if not one of the partners is dead. The women came from the top and the men from that side. We just removed the steps over here where the women were coming down with. Whenever the reservoir is full, the water passes through the drainage, just runs to the sea. We are now in the room of no return. That's the gate of no return. It is no more. In this room, many of the captives, they broke down in tears over here, wept bitter because seeing their parents and other relatives were far from realization. Through this gate, some of the captives from here were sent to Americas, West Indies, some part of Europe, for them to work in their various mines, plantations, and cotton farms. At the time of gold and the ivory, the gate was very wide, very big. When they changed the idea to human trade, they narrowed the gate to restrict movements. And about 5 or 10 people were chained to each other. They moved on the sideways. The seawater was closer by then, now it has receded. So the ships will be at the shore before they will bring small boats to convey the captives into. Looking at the small size of the gate, Staying here for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, they will just lose weight. So they can easily pass through. Even though the records were fed once or twice a day, some refused to eat. And this was committing suicide. They never knew where they were taking them to. They were struggling with them. All these flowers at the back by our brothers and sisters from the diaspora in the memory of those who just died over here. Yeah. And we believe that in a place where so many souls have been lost, the spirits of our ancestors, they are still here. Sometimes the room is very heavy. Families were separated, and this place will be the first time they're likely to see themselves, if not one of the partners is dead. Now it's a room of return. Nice. This is a lot. Okay. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG-10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.
While Elmina is the oldest slave dungeon in West Africa, its counterpart, which is located about 20 minutes from this area, has some of the worst tales of rape, torture, forced religious indoctrination, mass murder, and child separation.
Use the same water in there, first time wash them before they take them upstairs to rape them. Some of these ladies actually in here got pregnant, and when we get to the female section, we talk about it. Europeans themselves were not drinking from these tanks. Rather, they had black boys in the township, and the water system in the town was also killing. We stand in front of a condemned cell. Majority of the Africans in the castle remember enablement happens to be as a result of these tribal wars, which most of them were influenced by the European forces in here. When they get them to the castle, some of them outside would want to fight officers for their rights, and some would also want to team up to escape from this place. Doing these things, you were seen to be rebellious, and for that, we killed the rebellious one to serve as a deterrent for others in here not to repeat the same thing. And for them, they wouldn't shoot you, rather, they beat you out here before they push you into the cell. They block 3 doors behind you. No food, no water, no air, and no light. So you get dehydrated, you suffocate, and then you die in there. And the sad aspect is taking us into the cell until the last person amongst us dies. Nobody leave that place. So if you're that strong to withstand the condition for more than 24, 48 hours, it means in there you're going to stay with dead bodies. Once they are all dead, that is when the bodies are laid on the floor. They bring out the males to see what's happening to others, so that next time if you want to repeat the same thing, remembering what you saw on the floor deters you from escaping or fight officers in the castle. So we are going in there to have a feel of the place. Please get to watch your head. Also get to know in this castle, any door, window you see have been replaced. This is the only last door we have in here. The only last, let me say the only original door we have in here, because we still have other doors when they are replaced. The only original door. We have inside. Alright, so today there's no door here. There's no door in the middle. The first door itself is open, but I'm sure you can feel the heat in here. So just imagine having these 3 doors blocked for us to stay in. And like I said, until the last person in here dies, nobody leave this end. Before they probably die, probably they will still be smelling, because in the dungeons for days and months, no bath for you. A lot of people actually stay in here, and once they start to die, they're living sharing this place with the dead ones. The chamber we stand in was actually a storage room. They had a door over there, but with the intention of using this place as a condemned cell, they had that door blocked, added 2 extra doors, so that when they get you in here, you probably won't get any place to escape to. That is why today some do call this chamber as the room of no return. Once you walk in here, a living being, but then only dead bodies are to be taken out of this place. And I wouldn't want anyone dying here, so please, you watch our heads.
Male slave dungeons where the male captives were kept. So the toys just started here.
This is heavy. So there is a light here now, but there was no light here. During the period of enslavement, this was all dark. And as you can see, the only ventilation came from these very narrow, I suppose, openings, if you want to call that a window. Hundreds, thousands of people were kept here.
That shall not kill, that shall not commit adultery. Females were being raped, males were killed in the medicine. That shall not steal, ghouls, humans were also being from this. So what they themselves were even out there preaching, they probably couldn't actually practice it themselves. And that's not the only place they have the system, because aside having the Anglican Church up there, established the Methodist Church at the forecourt. I don't know if you've already visited the Elmina Castle. Portuguese established the Catholic Church right above the slave markets. The Dutch took over the Elmina Castle, built their church right above the female dungeons, the Dutch Protestant Church. If you go to Usu, Presbyterian Church also by the Denmark, and those that came from Accra, I'm sure you saw a fort on the hill with the name Fort Amsterdam. Amsterdam also had a church right above the male dungeons because the Dutch Reformed Church. So these same periods were keeping the captives above them, they as well worship. And they saw nothing wrong with these systems because they said Africans were not humans. Others that claim Africans were humans also said African happens to be the cursed one that probably always have to serve other races. So through that, down here they saw it to be strictly business, whilst out there as well worshiping their maker. The same premises became classrooms, not for purely Africans, not for purely Europeans. It was only designed for the mixed race or the mulattoes, the kids they have with the blacks, for those that were brought in here. And most of these kids going through the system, some were brainwashed, and others became slave merchants in the castle. Others are still coming. Right, so this happens to be the last chamber, and this area was also for the sorting and the selection of the captives. Due to the condition in here, not all of them were fit enough to make it out of this place. So those that were seen as truly weak were kept in this chamber. Others were chained in groups. They forced them through a tunnel that connects this place to the door of the gate of no return. So we walk in through this end, but when ships were ready, had to use the tunnel. It's unfortunate we can't go to the tunnel today because in the year 1834, Captain George McLean, who used to be the administrator, others do call him governor, was asked to block this place to symbolize the English ending their trade. But then practically, they were still smuggling humans. But before this land was given to the Europeans for the trade, the natives would come in here to worship a shrine we call Nanatadio, which happens to be the stone we see here. But then giving your land out means you will still be coming here to worship. So they were forced to take samples of the stone they worship into the township. The castle we see here was officially given to Ghanaians in 1960 when Ghana became a Republican country. In 1973, the stones were brought back to be worshipped in here. So today, those that still do have their belief in the system still do come in here to pray. That is why we see things they use for prayers in terms of libation and chairs they sit on when they are in for consultation and prayers as well. Yes, yesterday they had a reverential night, that is why you can see some of the bricks they laid in here. And over there, just as we are seeing these ones, visitors like yourself mostly do bring them when you're celebrating festivals like Ancestral, Emancipation, and others, or any other day. And I made mention when you die in the castle, they dump your body into the sea. But then for us in here, we believe that their souls are still in the castles. So when visitors bring them, we don't let out the sea. Rather, we keep them in areas where the captives still struggle, to honor, to respect, and to remember them. So once you see them anywhere in the castle, they serve equal purpose. That is why we see these things here. Question? Okay. Alright, so we stand inside the Palava Hall, and this happens to be the marketplace. So when the captives actually from different areas were actually brought in, this will be their first place. So the next doctors over there get to examine them to know how strong they were before they move them into domestic and commercial slaves. They march them forward. Merchants also seated with their goods also get to exchange you according to the physique, and how the doctors also go to examine you as to your strength. That was when some were given gunpowder, mirror, alcoholics, fabrics, leathers, and other stuff before they were sent downstairs for the branding to take place, where they heat metals onto their bodies to identify whether they belong to this group or together the marketplace or Palava where we stand. This same is about 31 years ago. The prison left this place to an area called Ancestral, and as you can all see now, the place being a craft shop. So it was first a garrison, it became a prison, and today happens to be a craft shop in here. The business in Africa was very profitable those days. And once I talk about business, I mean just two things: the gold trade and as well the human trade. So when you get a place for your end and you don't protect the land well, other Europeans were willing to fight you and take over that place. So this land we stand on, before the English could build this castle, the land had actually changed hands from 4 different Europeans before the English came in the fleet. The Portuguese stayed on this land for 100 years, Swedish for 4 years, Denmark for 3 years, Dutch another 3 years, and the English stayed on the same plot or piece of land for 296 years. The English coming here knew definitely as they got the land from the Dutch through war, others might come fight them as well. So for them, building the castle, they brought these cannons we see here. Aside the cannons we see around us, they built 2 forts to serve as a watchtower so that when enemies are coming, they can detect them first before even those in here. So when you look up there, you can see some white structure with a red cap. The fort over there. It is called Fort William. And they had another one because of the church, you can't see it's also called Victoria. So Victoria and William were serving as watchtower so that soldiers up there can see enemies from the land or the sea. When they do so, they signal those in here in the morning with flags. Afternoon, they use the reflection of mirrors. And evenings would either use a Morse code or a torch, tell them enemies are coming, so that soldiers can move from where they stayed, surround themselves to where the cannons are, depending on where the enemy is coming from, put in gunpowder, place cannonball at the mouth, light their match, then boom. Balls would enter enemy's ship, water gets in there, it would sink into the sea. And we all know those days too, we're fighting with bows and arrows and shields. So probably the enemy coming from the land, the ball will probably crack or spoil the disc in the shield, that they can hide in between there to also shoot them with their guns. So that is why we can see some also facing this direction. So these were for those from the land and those coming from the sea. We are moving to the governor's chamber. But whilst the captives were staying in their own poop, they had marble tiles as well as pitch pine wood. So everything we walk on from this place to the governor's chamber is still original. Both the wooden flaps and the tiles we see here, marbles.
The originals?
Original.
I ended the tour at the haunted Elmina castle by walking through the narrow door of no return. This was the last place many of our ancestors walked through before being herded onto European human trafficking vessels, bound for lands they invaded in the so-called New World. For me, it was important to fulfill the dream of returning to the land from where my ancestors came from, because enslavement prevented them from doing so. I paid homage to my ancestors by offering a libation in their honor.
As I reflect on my time here in Ghana, it is important to acknowledge that the transatlantic slave trade not only distorted Africa's economic development, it also distorted views of the history and importance of the continent itself. In the 18th century, Racist views of Africa were most famously and prominently expressed by Scottish philosopher David Hume, who said, quote, "I am apt to suspect the Negroes to be naturally inferior to the whites. There scarcely ever was a civilized nation of that complexion, nor even any individual eminent either in action or in speculation. No ingenious manufacturer among them, no arts, no sciences," unquote. Whilst some views changed slightly over time, there were still some who continued to hold these racist views. In the 19th century, the German philosopher Hegel simply declared, quote, "Africa is no historical part of the world," unquote. Later, Hugh Trevor Roper, professor of history at Oxford University, the great and prestigious Oxford University, expressed openly the racist view that Africa has no history as recently as 1963. Despite these racist propositions, we now know that far from Africa having no history, it is almost certain that human history actually began here. This continent was not just the birthplace of humanity, but also the cradle of early civilizations that made an immense contribution to the world that are still marveled at today. The most notable example is Kemet, the original name of ancient Egypt, which first developed in the Nile Valley more than 5,000 years ago, and was one of the first monarchies. However, before the rise of Egypt, an even earlier kingdom was founded in Nubia, in what is present-day Sudan. Tar Seti is thought to be one of the earliest states in history, the existence of which demonstrates that thousands of years ago, people on this continent were developing some of the most advanced political systems anywhere in the world. And as this continent experiences a new renaissance in many respects, our African brothers and sisters in the diaspora are being called to come home and embrace your heritage in this new epoch. I am your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb. We thank you for watching this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Take care now. Bye-bye.